Hey, welcome to Retro Sports Hub podcast. This is Sean Larkin, your host. Hope you're having a great day. Retro Sports Hub, where the past is always present. Continuing today to talk about the legends of the 80s, particularly my generation, but specifically, we're going to talk today about one of the legends, and I'm making a series out of this. The legend I'm going to be talking about today is somebody that is one of my favorites of all time, Magic Johnson. And really want to just go over some of the things that he accomplished through his career and some of those highlights, and just kind of give you more of a background on him. You've probably heard of him. You may not have a lot of history about him. I mean, you probably, if you're in the current era, this era, you probably know him more of a businessman, owner, of course, Hall of Fame basketball player. But as far as details about Magic, you may not know a lot about that. So I want to kind of go over some of those things and kind of relive that history of Magic Johnson. And really, it's where I developed my just my fandom of the Los Angeles Lakers and the career that he had there and the impact that he had on the NBA just overall generally. But let's go ahead and jump in. The nickname Magic is, interestingly enough, doing a little digging into this, he went to high school back in Lansing, Michigan, Everett High School. And a sports writer in that area witnessed one of his games in high school. And Magic had, in that game, had 36 points, 16 rebounds, and 16 assists in that one game. And that sports writer nicknamed him at that point Magic. And it stuck. His real name is Irvin Johnson, but and everybody knows him by Magic. And I think his family has seen some documentaries with him. There's a great documentary with him and Larry Bird that the family, I believe, call him Irvin. But anyway, Magic is what he's known for. He did lead his high school team to a state championship his senior year before joining over at Michigan State as a freshman over there. And he wasn't, back then they didn't have the one and done kind of thing. You did have some guys that went straight. Had a couple of guys, not many. Moses Malone, Daryl Dawkins. There were a couple of others. Bill Willoughby, I think, was one. There were some others potentially that went straight to the NBA out of high school. But Magic went to Michigan State. His freshman year was 1977-78 season. And then his sophomore year was that following 78-79 season. The freshman year, he actually took Michigan State to I believe it was the Elite Eight. Back then, there were only 32 teams that made the tournament. And interestingly enough, as you all, if you listen to anything that I've done, you know that I'm a University of Kentucky Big Blue basketball fan from being a little kid. And that 78 team was the championship team for University of Kentucky, and they actually beat Magic Johnson in the final, in the Elite Eight, 52-49, and Magic had a terrible game in that game. He, I believe, ended up that game with a total of 6 points on 2 of 10 shooting, and just terrible game. Had 6 turnovers, and they ended up losing that game to the eventual champions, University of Kentucky, and Kyle Macy led the way against Michigan State with 18 points, 3 assists, no turnovers. Fantastic game, as per Kyle Macy back then. And so he comes back, Magic comes back in sophomore year and leads Michigan State again to the this time to the national championship game, where they faced off with Larry Bird and an undefeated Indiana State team. And Magic led the team in that game, and they just basically, it really was, it was an easy game plan for Michigan State. They had to defend Larry Bird, and he got off his game, and Michigan State ended up winning that game 79-64 and winning the national title. And he was named most outstanding player for the Final Four, and that really started cementing his career as a rising star and set the stage for what was to come in his career in the NBA. And that was a game that gosh, it just kind of, it was you had two, we didn't really know at the time, but Larry Bird versus Magic Johnson in that game. I mean, it was just, and Magic had more. He had Greg Kessler on that team, and Kessler went on to play in the NBA as well, and they were just a more balanced team than Larry Bird's team, and Bird was unreal. I mean, just crazy, what he was able to achieve there. But back to Magic Johnson. So the draft's coming up, and he basically decides to forego his final 2 years of eligibility at Michigan State and go ahead and go into the NBA draft. And he was drafted first overall by the Los Angeles Lakers. And at that time, Dr. Jerry Buss had just bought the team, so it was kind of the whole tide of change there in LA. And he made an immediate impact that very first season. The Lakers went on to win the NBA championship over the Philadelphia 76ers in a 4-2 win in the championship. And that's that sixth game was a legendary. I mean, it really, if he wasn't already building a resume of being a superstar, that game really did it. Magic ended up playing, he was point guard, but he ended up playing center point in that game because Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, at that time, arguably the best player in NBA history at that time, was injured his ankle and couldn't play in that game. So Paul Westphal, the coach at that time, put Magic in there at center, and he had just one of those games that you grew to expect from Magic Johnson. Just annihilated the 76ers in that game, and ended up winning. I believe that game. He didn't have a triple-double in that game, but it was pretty darn close in that particular game, and they ended up winning the title in that championship game. And that really started the what they called the Showtime era for the Lakers, and he was a big part of that. They had some other pieces, of course, that were part of that, and but Magic really was being 6'9" at point guard was just not it was unheard of really at that time, and so he led that Showtime era for the Lakers. That included Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and you had James Worthy and Byron Scott, and James Worthy was one of my favorite players too. I mean, they called him Big Game James. Came out of North Carolina. And was on that team with Michael Jordan that won I believe it was the 82 NCAA title. But that Showtime era they ended up winning 5 titles over the course of, that in the 80s. They were the team of the 80s that decade. They won it in 80, 82, 85, 87, and 88, back-to-back wins in 87 and 88. The four championships, 82 to 88, were with Pat Riley at head coach, which I'll probably be doing a podcast about Riles at some point. Awesome coach. Again, he learned his style of play under tutelage from Adolph Rupp when he was at University of Kentucky back in the 60s. But really the Lakers, that team was so fun to watch. And what's interesting is that championship game in college, that 79 championship game where Magic and Bird went up against each other, that rivalry extended into the NBA with Bird's team being, they were tough. I believe they won 3 titles in the 80s and just had some amazing teams. And I thoroughly can't stand the Boston Celtics. So, I don't care if they ever win anything. But they always were it was a big deal when they played. And they matched up, I think, 3 different times over the course in the 80s, 84, 85, and 87. And the Lakers winning 2 of those 3 square-offs between the Celtics and the Lakers. And just some other, achievements for Magic beyond just the titles. Won MVP, the league MVP 3 times, 87, 89, and 90. As a 12-time All-Star and named to All-NBA First Team 9 times. And, just had an amazing career. I mean, the statistics for Magic were, the triple-doubles, that was kind of the thing that really, people remember for him as far as career. I mean, his career, he could score, he could rebound, assist. He did whatever it took to win, and that's one thing that Bird and Magic had that nobody could take from them, is just their will to win. I mean, there was no flopping, none of that BS that we see now with the NBA. It was just, they went all out. And, I always joke with my sons and, no blood, no foul. But, I mean, some of the fouls those guys took back then, and Jordan got a brunt of that as well when he came into the league. Some of those things, these guys today would be suspended for multiple games for some of the fouls that went on back then. And those guys didn't even get thrown out of games. They just kept on playing. And it was a different era. And unfortunately, there was, in Magic's career, I believe it was 1991, if I'm not mistaken, is when he came out with, had a press conference. I remember being at home that day. I was in college and just happened to had ESPN on that day, and there was breaking news. And anytime there's breaking news, it's usually a big deal. And he basically came out and announced that he had HIV and was diagnosed with that in 1991. The world really didn't know what to do with that. I mean, it was shocking for sure, and he retired immediately. But what's interesting is he did come back in I believe it was the 1992. I believe it was the 92. It was the 92 NBA All-Star game. Magic came back, had 25 points, 5 rebounds, 9 assists, couple steals, and was named the All-Star Game MVP, and had a couple of memorable three-point shots toward the end of the game that helped win the game for the Western Conference. But my goodness, I mean, and he had been not playing at all organized ball, and he ended up playing in the 92 on the Dream Team, which was probably arguably the greatest team put together in basketball history in the world. I mean, they just rolled through the Olympics. It was fun to watch. I mean, those guys the practices were probably more competitive than the games themselves. But yeah, that was really tragic as an NBA and a Magic fan. And he did return briefly in 1995-96 season, played 32 games, but really that was kind of the end of the road. That 91 season was really the last time he played a full season in the NBA, and just amazing to watch. I mean, if you don't know much about him, or if you haven't seen him, play, there's tons of YouTube stuff out there. Definitely check it out. Post-career, I mean, he's just made huge strides in the business world. Magic Johnson Enterprises is a big deal. I believe at this point he's part owner of the Dodgers and also the Washington Redskins. And had a big influence on the basketball world. And again, back to him and Larry Bird, they really revived the NBA and saved it in a lot of ways, because it was really was suffering at that point, and was probably, I mean, it was on the brink. I mean, the 80 finals, just really quick on that championship game, the 6th game, was actually tape delayed, if I'm not mistaken. So that's how irrelevant the NBA was at that time in the big sports world, in the scheme of things. So they really changed the landscape completely for that. And, again, my favorite player of all time, not even question, in NBA, nobody's close. The guy was just fun to watch, smiling all the time. But man, he was a killer. And hope you've enjoyed this talk about Magic Johnson, some of the highlights of his career and the impact he had on me, and also the sports world. And it's something that I think that his history will be there for history, so to speak. So hope you enjoyed this podcast, and don't forget to subscribe to me on Spotify, and you can also subscribe on my website as well. There's a box down there to subscribe to the website there for updates. But until next time, have a great day, and we'll be talking to you again soon on a podcast coming your way.